This is your man, the brave artist, Nathan Lee, and this is the first Life is Art podcast for 2025. And we are opening up with a film review. The long awaited Robert Eggers film, Nosferatu, was the film of the day for me. And I have some thoughts about it. And for those of you who don't know what Nosferatu is, it's essentially a retelling of Dracula. And it's been adapted a couple of times. There was the original 1922 film, silent black and white film, which was iconic, and some of the visual influences still felt today in some of today's horror films. And then there was I think it was 79, Warner Herzog's rendition of it. It was a different film, different feel, and it was it was pretty breathtaking as far as the visuals. The story was the same classic story of the vampire and basically a retelling of Dracula. I won't get into the history of it, but the name Nosferatu was the new name for this film because the Dracula property was being the I think it was the wife of Bram Stoker said, that's not going to happen. Nobody's going to adapt this, and I believe they had to make this adaptation with different names so that they could avoid being sued. Well, that being said, um, you now know what you're getting into with the film because it's another retelling. It's a modern day retelling of that story. And the first question that people are going to ask before they go see anything, they're not going to ask, was it a visual masterpiece? And we'll get into that. They're not going to ask, um, if and Robert Eggers is known for this, if everything was meticulously crafted by hand by people from the region, they're going to ask, was it good? And I have an answer that's not as simple as you might think as far as good or bad. And I may seem a bit biased, but everybody has their opinions, and I'm no different than other people. If you're looking for an American movie, it was good for an American movie. If you're talking cinema and film internationally, I can almost safely say there were offerings that were better. And, there were even some domestic offerings that arguably were better than Nosferatu. And here's the thing, I don't know that it was any fault of Robert Eggers because he was sticking very closely to the source material. And in doing that, you're already working with a paper thin story. Story's very simple. A vampire is fixated on a man's wife. The vampire will stop at nothing, infects town with the plague. A group of men tries to stop the vampire. And the film pretty much has just about everything in common with the 1922 film. And I say film and I say movie, and I don't use them interchangeably. I think film, I'm not going to say it's superior, but I think film has more transformative ability than a movie. I think a film can be a great movie, but I don't think a movie can move into the realm of film. Film has the ability to entertain and be um, thought provoking. I think movies stay within the realm of Jurassic Park. What you see is what you get. Dinosaurs running around and so forth. And I think Nosferatu somewhere along the way I think it gets lost in I don't want to say what it wants to be, but what it actually evolves into. And there are two camps of Robert Eggers. There's the camp that remembers what he did in The Lighthouse and The Witch, and then there's the camp that remembers Robert Eggers more more Hollywood sensitive offering, The Northman. I think if you fall into the Northman side of the equation, you might find something here to enjoy. I think if you fall into the camp that was pretty much reared on The Witch and Lighthouse and things of a more cerebral nature, you might find this film a bit disappointing. Now, since we've discussed the two Robert Eggers films, and you have a point of reference as to whether you will like this or not, um, possibly, just depending on which type of films you like from Robert Eggers. Um, I think you get a good idea of whether I think you can enjoy any Robert Eggers movie, but I think this gives you an idea as far as preference what you're getting into, and that might help you better enjoy the film. I went in thinking that we were going to get the former Robert Eggers that did The Lighthouse. Um, and in my opinion, we didn't get that. We got the Northman Robert Eggers. So, does the film succeed as a mass market piece of art? Um, the numbers are saying yes, it does, but I don't know if that's because of the anticipation or if that's because people end up liking the movie. Excuse me. And I say that because of this. If and we'll be able to tell, I think, after the dust is settled and after the hype has died down, I think talking to people after seeing the movie will give us an indication of what they think about Nosferatu. I believe there's the small possibility that the film could have alienated both audiences because I think you get a little bit of everything, a combination of the witch and a combination of the Northman, more so the Northman than the witch. And one area that I believe that it was more a work of art and more along the lines of a visual experience, um, was the art direction was stellar. I think it was more so akin to, um, something like a and I heard this on or saw this on a podcast, and I think that it hit the nail on the head. It's like looking at a Caravaggio painting, and in that way, it's absolutely stunning. It was breathtaking. Um, the shifting scenes between what was almost monochromatic and images that are bursting with color and felt alive, I think they did those well. Um, the recreation of these towns, the um, Transylvania, the the towns, Romania, um, Carpathian. I think I'm saying it right. Is it Carpathian? The Carpathian people. They were done, and when you look at the credits, you see that a lot of the staff were not necessarily from there. There was a lot of people that were Czechoslovakian, but the region was close. He was implementing people that were from that area. Um, I have no complaints over what this film looked like. It might be one of the most beautiful works that I've seen as far as the meticulous detail. Robert Eggers spared nothing. However, I don't know if those meticulous details will have an impact on the audience, and maybe they're not meant to. Maybe they're more so for the artists to feel good about, for the artist to feel accomplished with, because that's what Robert Eggers is known for. He's known for painstaking, making these set pieces and these visual masterpieces, either through the camera or through the environments that he creates. There were a lot of beautiful things to look at. Some of them were frightening. Um, Dracula himself, and let's get into that as a visual art piece. I have to say that Bill Skarsgård made Dracula his own. And there was a lot of talk about Dracula's mustache. Did it bring the film down? Did it not? Um, And I have to say that was another thing that Robert Eggers got right. Most noblemen that were, Romanian, Eastern European noblemen had mustaches. In fact, Dracula looked more authentic than he ever had in any recent or past rendition. Um, and Skarsgård in the voice, while it wasn't as booming and authoritative as I had been led to believe, it was still a voice that I would not have thought would come from Skarsgård. And it's even more shocking that Ben's or Bill's voice was his own. There was no, you know, f- um, um, assisted special effects on his voice. There was nothing. That was him. And Skarsgård has always been known to um, get so into a role that he takes complete ownership of it. He's one of the great method actors of our time, and this is no different. And when I saw him in it, I could tell it was Bill Skarsgård. In this one, there's no sign of Bill at all. So that leads you to wonder: are we looking at a possible Oscar for him? Well, if we're talking artistic integrity and craftsmanship, just as him as a performer, yeah, I would say that yeah, we might want to consider Bill. Uh, Lily Depp, her character was it was mildly underwhelming. I mean, I some of the things that she did as far as the contortion without special effects, they were pretty impressive. But I think that movie belongs to Bill Skarsgård. William Defoe always does his thing, and the other actors were they were adequate, and they didn't necessarily. And I may catch some flack for this, but they didn't they didn't do anything that hadn't been done before in a period piece. So I was completely unmoved by the rest of the cast. I have to say Defoe, Skarsgård, and to a lesser extent, Lily Depp were the main stars of the show, and that's fine because they got the screen time. Um, as a piece of art, this movie succeeds. It succeeds hand over fist. It's absolutely flawless. Um, but let's get into the story and where I think it manages to drop a couple of balls. As I said before, they were working with a paper thin story. And I think Robert Eggers had a chance to make Nosferatu not only his visually, but make the story his in a fresh new way. I think there was a simplification of the personified evil that Dracula was. And I think there was a lot of effort to convey what a monster, what an evil entity he was. Yet he was under the control of this woman who somehow had taken what little heart he had and turned it into a um, a toxic romance that he was ready to risk his existence for. And ultimately, that's spoiler alert. That's what happens in the end. His passion and his lust and his desire for this woman ended up being his undoing. The men played no essential part in getting rid of Dracula. It really was the story of of the Count versus versus the woman that he was in love with, and she makes the ultimate sacrifice in order to stop the evil that's him. I think they could have explored that part of what Dracula, well, Count Orlok, whichever way you want to put it, because it's the same character. I think there was an opportunity to explore the complexities of a being that's evil. And it made me think of classic villains all through history that were monstrous, but there was somebody that either loved them or somebody that they loved. And I think that this complexity could have made a more nuanced character. And getting into the pain of the curse that Orlok was under, as far as being this undead being, and not quite being able to love, like not being able to love to the capacity that he probably wanted to love this woman, but was incapable of. Yet he was attracted to her and the possibility of love, as though he were like a moth to a flame. And I think there was a ball dropped. I think a retelling played it safe. And I'm kind of disappointed because you didn't play the Count himself safe. You didn't play the visual safe. You made a monster that was completely in contrast to the original source character. And I thought that was brave all the way around. I love the authenticity of him. Um, but unfortunately, that same level of bravery wasn't taken when it came to making the story more complex. And I think right there is where we get into movies and films. I think a film, a good piece of cinema, would have taken a chance on the storytelling, just as it had taken a chance on the visuals. I think what a movie does is it gives us themes that we're comfortable with, that we can deal with. A monster with big teeth biting people. And that's essentially what Count Orlok was. And there were only hints at a more complex story. Why? Why Lily Depp? Why did he fall in love with her? What was it? Was there something? Was there an additional depth of emptiness that wasn't discussed in the original novel that this monster had? Um, was there a fear of humanizing Orlok to the point of where you might sympathize with him? I don't know. There are a lot of considerations to think about. Um, and unfortunately, those those instances will never be. There's no reason to have the conversation because they're not present within the film. So as I go back and forth on Nosferatu, the question now is, brave artist, did you like this film? I called it a film, and my answer is I I appreciate it, but I don't know that I liked it. There were smaller films I think that did a better job of content, of being, the content was more important, or well, as important or more important than the visuals. And this was, for the most part, complete substance devoid for me. It was a case of style over substance. And I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know if I have a right to take off points because the original didn't give you much to work with. If I take off points for anything, it's that this visionary filmmaker who reveled in taking chances took only one chance, and that was the physical presence, the visual aesthetic of Count Orlok, and that's the only chance he took. So as it stands right now, before I give it another watch, I have to give it a B plus for a film made in this time, and a C minus for a film for this film had it been released when some of the greats were released in years before. So I hope that gives you an idea of what I think of Nosferatu. Is it worth seeing? I think it is, just so that you can satisfy your curiosity, um, and kind of look for some of the things that I'm talking about. I believe that as a piece of art, it's worth seeing. As a piece of cinema, that is up to the beholder. This is your guy, the brave artist, Nathan Lee, for Life is Art. the first of the year. And tell your friends to share, like, and subscribe if you like this content. And perhaps we'll start doing more film reviews. Until the next time, take care.